Welcome to the next installment in my video lecture series in economics. And in this particular video lecture, I'm going to be taking a look at distortions associated with supplying goods freely. And this is from my public finance course and relates to the section about publicly provided private goods. And it's good to probably review what is meant by a publicly provided private good. So publicly provided goods for which there is a large marginal cost associated with supplying additional individuals are referred to as publicly provided private goods. So realize that the fact that these goods are publicly provided and there's a large marginal cost associated with supplying additional individuals. So what I want to do is illustrate the different distortions associated with supplying goods freely in particular. And the thing that's going to vary here between this slide and the next slide is that this demand curve here is going to be relatively elastic, i.e. it's going to be relatively flat, closer to horizontal than to perpendicular. And this means that people are responsive to changes in the price, that changes in the price will lead to relatively larger percentage changes in the quantity demanded. So here we have our demand curve. It's relatively elastic. And if we were going to take a look at the efficient level of output and consumption of this good, this would be where marginal cost intersects the demand curve. So price will equal marginal cost. And that will give us the efficient level of output for this particular good. So the price charge would be equal to marginal cost, and the equilibrium output would be QE, and we would have an efficient outcome in this market. However, if we were to decide to give this good away freely, i.e. charge nothing for it, people would demand QM for this particular good. So what would be the welfare loss associated with that, or the distortion in the marketplace? The shaded area here represents the welfare loss from excessive consumption. For every unit of consumption past QE, marginal cost is greater than marginal benefit, the demand curve. So individuals are consuming items that the marginal cost is greater than the marginal benefit. So for every single unit from QE to QM, marginal cost is greater than marginal benefit, and that is the welfare loss from this excessive consumption. So make a note of the size of this particular area. So in the next slide, we're going to be doing the same exact analysis, except we're going to be using a demand curve that is more inelastic. It is less responsive to changes in price. So you can see here it is closer to perpendicular. It is less responsive. Changes in price induce percentage changes in price induce lower relative changes or reductions in quantity demanded. So this demand curve is closer to perpendicular. It is relatively inelastic. So we have the same marginal cost, and for the efficient outcome, it will be where marginal cost is equal to demand. That would be equal to QE. If we were to provide this good freely at zero price, individuals would demand QM, and the distortion would be the consumption of goods above QE to QM because marginal cost is greater than the marginal benefit. So we can see here, this is the welfare loss from that excessive consumption. For every unit consumed past QE, marginal cost is greater than marginal benefit, and all of those represent a welfare loss. So to summarize, if we take a look at both of these slides next to one another, hopefully you can see the difference in the welfare loss from excessive consumption and how it relates to the demand curve. When the demand curve is relatively elastic, we have a larger welfare loss from excessive consumption compared to when the demand curve is relatively inelastic. So you can see here that this shaded area is much smaller than the shaded area over here. So make sure you remember that the welfare loss from excessive consumption is dependent upon the elasticity of the demand curves in question.